Welcome in to the PFF podcast. Steve Palazzolo here with Sam Monson, and we are continuing our look at the history of PFF. Please be sure to check out the archive. We've talked about our personal entry into the company. We've talked to the godfather of PFF, Neil Hornsby. We've talked to some of the key figures who have made the company run, and today we'll hit on a few others. A couple housekeeping items before we get into it. If you guys have not seen the new PFF products, PFF Edge and PFF Elite, you're missing out. Check it out at profootballfocus.com. They are unbelievable, a repackaging of some of our unbelievable PFF products. So this week, we have a special offer. We did this last week as well for our brand new PFF Elite package, which includes access to our signature stats, award-winning fantasy football analysis and tools, and so much more, worth $200. All you have to do is leave a review in iTunes and be sure to include your email address or Twitter handle so we can get a hold of you. It's got to be a 5-star review too. Those 5-star reviews are pretty important for the podcast. So we really appreciate the fans and everybody that supported us through the years, and the PFF Elite and PFF Edge products are kind of our way of giving back. The one other thing that we're going to be doing, Sam, is taking a little survey. So I'll let you kind of get into that because this is going to be an important thing too going forward.
Yeah, part of we need to find out who you guys are. We need to find some demographics. Are you, what kind of people listen to the PFF podcast? Other than highly discerning people, I have no doubt. But we need you guys to go to a link and fill in a very quick survey. It'll take like 20 seconds max. So survey.libsyn.com/PFF podcast. Survey.libsyn.com/PFF podcast, and take our little survey. Like I say, 20 seconds of your life. It'll help us out a lot. Thank you.
I took it earlier today, and it only took me 15 seconds, so you can get through it even quicker. So yeah, we appreciate all the support, all of the listeners. Like we've said in the past, the podcast has really taken off, and we owe it all to you. Now, today's episode, we're going back through some of the guys who helped shape PFF. Like I said, through the archives. I highly encourage you to go back and listen to Sam and I give a little overview, to Neil. We had Ben and Khaled last week. Today, 3 characters, Nathen Yankee, we've got Gordon McGinnis, and we have Rick Drummond. 3 guys who kind of came in around the same time, 2010, 2011, and not only did they help shape the company, but they're still shaping it today, Sam.
Yeah, this is like the first group of outsiders, I guess. The next wave, the guys that weren't in the core initial group of PFF staffers, PFF guys, but came on pretty early in the whole system and have become like a new core of PFF. You know, guys we brought in from outside, a lot like you, guys who, as soon as we put the paywall up, we had to start making a bit of money, suddenly came looking to help, looking to come in from the inside and avoid having to pay the money for the statistics. So that was, like I said, it was one of the biggest mistakes we made, the way we went about it, but it also gave us most of the best next wave of people. So I think these are 3 really interesting guys to talk to.
Yeah, you really attracted the talent when you put the paywall up, so well done.
And you.
By you guys, and me as well, the talent. So some of the common questions for these guys before we get into it. Nathen Yankee, potentially a spy. I'm going to ask him about that. Gordon McGinnis, I'm going to ask him about his love for long snappers. And I'm going to ask Rick if he ever sleeps. Because we don't think that he does, with the amount of work that he gets done and the hours at which it gets done.
Yeah, Rick was great because I was working on GMT, old Greenwich Mean Time, which is 5 hours ahead of Eastern. Rick is on Pacific Time, 8 hours behind me. So I would be doing stuff mid-morning. You look at the clock and it's 11 a.m. my time. You're kind of calculating back what that means it is where Rick is. And there was basically no time where you couldn't type in a message to Rick and he wouldn't answer. It was ridiculous.
Yeah, we loved trying to figure out what his schedule actually was. So I had a lot of fun talking to all 3 guys, so let's get into it. Starting with Nathen Yankee, we'll roll right through Nathen, Gordon, and Rick. Here we go. Here with Nathen Yankee, PFF analyst. Nathen, How you doing today? Welcome to the PFF podcast as we rehash the history of the company.
I'm doing well, Steve. Happy to be on. How are you doing?
Doing great. Let's go back and describe where you came from. First off, what is your current role? I know we just give you different titles every week. What's your current role? Try to sum it up. I know you wear a lot of hats here still.
Yeah, I basically have two roles at Pro Football Focus right now. I am the director of analytics, so anything that has to do with numbers, I get to take care of, and then the director of player participation. So our data collection process where we keep track of who's on the field, where they line up, and what they do. I manage all of our 100 plus people who do that data collection.
Now, unlike some of the others who have been on in the previous podcasts, you excel at player participation. Some of our previous guys did not do so well. This seems to be your baby. Because I know we have a lot of part-timers and guys that do player participation. Give one of your secrets, at least one of your secrets, how you've been so accurate through the years.
Guess I'll give two of them. One, keep a lot of good notes. Everything that you can do to tell what a player or who a player is, since you're not always able to see the number. Look at their shoes, their socks, their shoelaces, how high up their socks go, anything like that, and then do the same team over and over. So, if someone has a certain kind of shoe, some players wear the same kind of shoe week after week after week. Some of them switch it up, but knowing what will stay consistent, what won't stay consistent. So when you see a player, you'll know exactly who he is before or within a second.
The real trick is to just do the 2000 Colts offense, the Peyton Manning Colts offense, where nobody ever moved. They ran two formations, and they all lined up in the same spot every time.
Yeah, I was also reminiscing about the 49ers defense recently when they had a clear front seven and all they ever did is switch from base defense to nickel defense. Everyone would stay on the left side or the right side, so that never changed. So it was just changing, okay, they have a nose tackle in or they have a slot cornerback in.
Yeah, the nose tackle and slot corner. They were the only two guys who came in. I used to love watching or looking at the recaps of guys who played. Only 12 guys pretty much saw the field unless it was a blowout with the old 49ers. But those are some great tricks. How did you end up at PFF? So let's go back. What year did you start? How did you end up at PFF? And what were you doing previously?
Sure. I started in 2010 at Pro Football Focus. It was the day that they switched the website, started charging for things, had an article about all of the changes that were going on to the website. And at the very bottom of that article, they said, and if you're willing to help out, we're looking for volunteers. So if you'd like to volunteer, contact Neil. So I believe it was that day that I contacted Neil. He got back to me right away through email, did a game of player participation, and then that's how I joined the team. Before that, going back a few years, just in late middle school, early high school, was working on a project just on my own, trying to find a mathematical way of ranking all the best players all time, including things like all pro teams, Pro Bowl teams, how many wins their teams had, a bunch of things that I basically would not do now. But I kept trying to find better ways of going about doing that.
Well, you were in middle school at the time. Of course, I hope you've grown since then. That's what you did for fun?
That's what I did for fun is early high school, late middle school, coming up with this massive spreadsheet and a formula of how to weight if they were in the Hall of Fame or not, the all-pro teams, all those fun things, if they were on the Super Bowl team or not. And I kept trying to improve that project. I came across websites like Pro Football Reference, which were a big help, Football Outsiders, which was a big help, and just trying to find more details to make everything more accurate. Was looking for play-by-play data, which is how I found Pro Football Focus. And I'm like, well, they have a lot more data than anyone else has. I'd be able to do even more with this. So for me, this has all just been a continuation for a project that I've been working on for 15 years.
So you've been using us over the last few years just to live out your middle school dreams?
Pretty much, yeah.
Well, I'm glad that we got to the heart of that. I thought you had other motivation for why you're here at Pro Football Focus. Did you not spend some time with Football Outsiders?
Yes, I did spend a year at Football Outsiders. I was a game charter for them, so charting information, which definitely helped with my transition to Pro Football Focus. And then also, since I really enjoyed looking back, fell in love with football, watching NFL films, learning about all these teams who played before I was even born. So they go back and go through the game books of old games and get them into Excel. So I helped with that project as well. But we've been doing the same thing here at Pro Football Focus, going back and doing previous years, doing 2007, 2006. So now we just have to go back and do 1920 to 2004, and we'll be good to go.
That's all we need, huh? So are you a spy for Football Outsiders? That's something we've been wondering for years now. You kind of came over unprompted, and we just always assumed that you still worked for Football Outsiders.
Yeah, we joke around about it, but once I joined Pro Football Focus, after a week or so, I was done at Football Outsiders. So I am not a spy, or at least that's what I need to go on record as saying.
Well, thank you for clearing the air. I'm a little suspect. We might have to bug your apartment. Let me ask you this, Nate, because you are pretty much you're our numbers guy. You know, when we need something done, we meaning Neil, or anyone else. No, when anyone needs something done that's a little bit above what I'm capable of doing or what other guys are capable of doing, we call Nate. He runs one of his 50,000 spreadsheets that he has going at a time, and he'll spit out some numbers for us. So how many computers do you have going at a given time? Because last year we made you come into the office for a little bit. We started to have some office hours, and you weren't very happy about it because it sounds like your home office setup is a lot more efficient.
Yeah, right now I have a combination of 6 either TVs or computer monitors, all at my desk right now. As recently as yesterday, I had all 6 running at once, all doing various things, whether it's having some TV show on, something like NFL Network on in the background, another computer for Twitter, but a lot of that goes not just to the math part of it, but player participation. I would have one screen where I have a game going live, another screen where I would be pausing, rewinding, fast forwarding, getting to various points in the game, another computer for all my notes, so I didn't have to go back and forth between typing in data and looking at the notes, another for Twitter, so I could tweet out things during commercials. So have plenty of monitors that help with a lot of different things.
I'm taking notes on this. What is the most efficient setup? Because I'm definitely a multitasker myself, and that sounds like you've got it down. You've got this process down pat.
Yep, now, one computer right in front of me where I'm talking to you, one to my left, one to my right, a big, nice TV screen to my upper right, a smaller one to my upper left, and then way to the left is my least used one where I keep stuff like looking at scores for college games when college games are going on, so I don't have to look at it too much, but just can glance at it quickly.
Can we get a screenshot of your setup? Just give me your optimum setup, get us a screenshot, and we'll tweet it out so that everyone at home can just... I need the visual. I want to see the visual of this setup, and make it look like you're working on all these screens at the same time. Pull up a bunch of games and an 05 game and all that stuff, and make it look like you're working hard.
Yeah, I know I've tweeted it out before. I know during the draft when you were on with Sports Illustrated, I had you on the big screen when I took a picture of everything I had for my draft setup. So I already have a picture with you in it and ready to go.
Oh, great. Let's use that one. That feels like it's a good one. I appreciate that. I appreciate you giving me that prime real estate on the big screen.
Mm-hmm.
Let me ask you this, because Excel seems to be your baby, and there's all these other different ways of compiling numbers and manipulating numbers, but Excel seems to be your baby. When did you first fall in love with Microsoft Excel?
We'll have to go back to probably elementary school at some point. I come from a family where both my mom and dad were computer programmers. My brother right now, as a career choice, was a computer programmer. So it's definitely in my blood. I started in Word without knowing what Excel was. And if I wanted to make a table, I'd just have to use the tab button. I know around 96, 97, growing up in Wisconsin, was a Packers fan. And around when they were winning the Super Bowls, I would get my dad these headline figures, which were a couple inches tall, figures of the football players with really big proportionally heads. So I could make a bunch of columns saying their number, their name, their team, their position. And that was the most intense spreadsheet-like thing I had to that point. So I just like organizing data and organizing information, and I enjoy doing it with those figures, and that helped me fall in love with football in the first place.
So you fell in love with Excel and football at the same time, essentially.
Pretty much.
Have you ever asked Sam for help with Excel?
Not with Excel. I would definitely ask him for help for football related things, but not so much Excel.
Have you ever asked me for help with Excel?
I did one point because I didn't know how to do something, and you did. So you told me what button I had to click, and it worked.
Amazing. I mean, the guy who is better at Excel than anyone at the company did actually come to me for some advice one time. And
You'll never let me forget it.
I will never let you forget it. I cannot believe that you do not know how to text to columns our data. That was amazing. It was a great day. Any time that I can help out, but you owe me for the rest of your life, so you have to run all these different things that I need you to run from here on out. I've brought up before that everybody at PFF has some level of like OCD because we're so entrenched in this stuff, and the data's got to be right, and all these different things, and from Ben to Neil to Khaled, we all have something that we're focused on that just has to be right. For you, I know when you get a data set, it's just like, man, this one thing's off. I can't do anything with it. Or we only have 12 years of data. I need, what'd you say, 100 years of data to make it work right. But I believe we had a conversation before. Were you the guy in that was running a Madden franchise that just needed every detail to be perfect before starting? Did we have that conversation before?
Yeah, I surprisingly wasn't someone who needed every detail of the shoes and socks right, which now if I did the game, I definitely need all of those things right because I wouldn't be happy if it wasn't. But the people at Madden do a good job of that now, but I would need all of the stats right, and especially back in the day, they would have some historic teams, so that was also part of the project that I wanted to do was get all of the historic teams right, get all of their names in, get all the numbers right, get all their skills right, so that I could go see what would happen if the 72 Dolphins played the 85 Bears and know who would win if those two teams played each other.
And that's that middle school project. Did you pass middle school? This wasn't like an old project that you just haven't finished yet and you didn't really graduate, right? This is just your own thing on the side?
Yeah, this was my own thing on the side. I did actually get to use it once in English in 12th grade after the AP test when we had nothing to do. We just got to do a project on whatever that we were passionate about, and I'm like, well, I already did this, so I presented that. So I was able to use it for school, and I think in college was able to use my capstone project with something I was doing football-wise, but basically mostly on my own. But I graduated school and all that fun stuff on the side.
Well, I'm proud of you, Nate, and I'm definitely glad that you can continue this 15-plus year project here with us at PFF. When you were presenting in high school, did you use all of your debate team tactics? Did you use proper hand usage, eye contact? Can you give some of your historic debate exploits, please?
Sure. In high school, I was on the speech team, which we called the forensics team, which is competitive public speaking and acting. I did more of the competitive public speaking thing. My high school has won state now, something like 10 plus years in a row, plus a number of times before that when I was on two. Then I went on to college where my college team had won state something like 30 years in a row. At the time, I was wanting to be a football coach rather than a football statistician, since I didn't quite know at the time that that was a career path I could do. So I got into coaching. So I spent 5 years in college and a little after college coaching speech, coaching debate. So once some of our guys started getting on TV, I'm like, oh, this is another talent that I can go help pass on of things that you should do or things that you should avoid doing.
It sounds like you just kind of jumped into powerhouse programs, though. I think that's more. Yeah. You're more of a freeloader than an innovator. Is that right?
Pretty much, yeah. I helped make their teams better, though. We kept winning state as long as I was there.
Yeah, that's good. They probably already had a nice established talent base, and you just kind of jumped in. No, it's impressive. It's impressive either way, Nate. I mean, look at what a well-rounded character you are. We thought you were just a stat guy, and we've got debate, we've got your coaching. What about football playing? Did you play a little bit in high school?
I played last year in middle school. I broke my arm second week of practice, so there went that year. And then freshman year of high school, I was the lightest one on the lightweight freshman team. So my body did not really handle that well. I played strong safety, I played all over the place in practice on the offense, but after 1 year of that, I realized my body could not handle another year of that. So that was that.
Probably a wise choice on your part. Let me ask you a couple last questions to wrap it up. Give me a quick synopsis, PFF, how you've seen it grow since you've come over as a spy. You know, what information have you gathered, and how have you seen us evolve through the years, the traction that we've gotten both with the media, with various NFL teams. Can you sum up that growth and kind of where you see it going?
Sure. Internally, it's been great to see the growth. Somewhere in there, I took over hiring for our part-time processes. So just the number of people I've gotten to hire year after year has continued to grow at a huge rate. So seeing it internally grow, seeing the amount of data that we collect has grown a ton as well. You've talked more on some of the previous ones, how we started collecting college in 2014. So we almost have as big of a college database as we do an NFL database at this point, which is insane. So the amount of data we have, the amount of people we have, and just how much we've grown within the media as well. Personally, it's nice to see my Twitter following grow over the course of the years, but seeing everyone else's too, and just seeing how much I watch TV, watch NFL Network, ESPN, NBC, Fox, CBS, how often just Pro Football Focus is named on those stations. So just watching, doing my own thing, and then all of a sudden, oh, Pro Football Focus, I work for them.
Yeah, it is. It is a lot of fun seeing that. And, you know, since 2010, you've certainly seen a big chunk of that evolution. I'm sorry, since 2010.
Yep.
I got one final question, and this is not something I would ask anyone else at PFF, but you seem like a special case. How much do you weigh?
So I don't have a good answer for that, but I can tell the story of why you're asking me that if you'd like me to tell the story.
Feel free to tell the story, but if you lie, I will fix it.
Okay, but I'm going to tell my version of the story where I sound like the good guy and all of you sound mean. So
there's a video that proves otherwise, but go right ahead and explain why that was a question.
Like I said, I was the lightest one on my lightweight freshman high school team. I've always been skinnier. Even in college, I went to University of Wisconsin, Eau Claire, where they have this big hill between upper and lower campus. So when they do like freshman 15 data, they just take our campus out of it. So then come working here, where we're working at a computer basically all day, a little more difficult to get exercise in. So my way of combating that is I have a treadmill desk. So if I want to walk while I work, I can. But one season, I think it was 2013-ish, I had Lyme disease where my knee got really swollen, so I couldn't work on the treadmill all year. So after years of not really gaining weight, all of a sudden I did gain weight and didn't realize it. So we were at Chicago when the draft was in Chicago at 120 Sports. We were working with them, doing some video stuff for them. And someone asked me my weight. I did not give an accurate number. I gave the number that I thought was true. And so we all bet on how much I weighed, and we weighed me, and I was wrong, and Sam was closest, I believe. So
by how much? How far were you off? Because this was,
I think, 28 pounds.
Yeah, 28 pounds. It was a bit of a sob story now that you bring it up, that you were injured and sick and you couldn't work out. But you were extremely confident at your number. You were extremely confident. And to have the guy that works with numbers more than anyone at the company being 28 pounds off on his own weight, I thought that was concerning. I thought Chris almost fired you on the spot.
Yeah, I think it took a little bit for Chris to find out, but I got to keep my job, so I'm happy about that.
Well, you're lucky, and we were lucky to be there to watch you weigh 28 pounds higher than you thought. And we do have the video on some sort of private YouTube somewhere.
The video does not exist. Don't go looking for it.
We might have to reveal that to the public because, again, I just credibility-wise, for someone that spits out so many numbers like you do, that was just not a good day for Nathen Jahnke. But look, we appreciate you coming on. We appreciate everything you've done for PFF. Spy or not, Nate is our go-to guy when it comes to manipulating the database, pulling out juicy nuggets, and continuing to help us grow in so many areas. So that is Nathen Jahnke, one of the key pieces with PFF since 2010. Here with Gordon McGinnis, the lead special teams analyst here at Pro Football Focus, a title that he is extremely proud of. Our special teams ace. Gordon, how are you doing today?
I'm doing good, Steve. How's it going?
Doing great. I know you cringe sometimes when the term special teams ace is thrown around for everybody who plays special teams, because you get down and dirty with special teams. We'll get into that in a little bit, but well, actually, tell me, how are you enjoying that right now as our special teams ace, our lead special teams analyst that you took over just a few years ago?
Oh, I love it. I mean, you guys all know I spend enough time talking to you guys about special teams players. You guys had to listen to me all off-season talking about Zane Gonzalez at Arizona State, so it's good to get involved in that. The phrase special teams ace, when it's used as in reference to basically any player who doesn't play offense and defense very much but just plays special teams, continues to infuriate me. But I think it's understandable why. It's how players and how fans recognize a player when it is specifically what they are. So I can live with the frustration for now, I think.
Yeah, well, we will continue to educate the public that not everybody who happens to be a gunner is a special teams ace. But let's back the truck up a little bit. Let's go back to the early days of PFF, because I think, I came in 2011. For the most part, I think I would consider you class of 2011. You were with my recruiting class, which I still think goes down as the best in PFF history. But you were involved a little bit ahead of time. So give me the backstory. When did you first hear about PFF? When did you first really join PFF? And just give me your early days background, Gordon.
So I knew Neil, Ben, and Khaled through a UK NFL fan forum that we all used to post on. So I first heard about PFF. I remember it must have been back around about 2006, I think, around about then. And on this forum, one morning I got up. Monday Night Football I'd recorded from the night before. It was Philadelphia against the New York Giants, and it was the game where Osi Umenyiora had 6 sacks. And for some reason that morning I decided it would be fun just to chart what happened between Umenyiora and the Eagles left tackle in that game. And this was, I hadn't seen the scores. I didn't know that he had 6 sacks. Wrote this all up and posted it on the fans forum, and Neil actually got in touch with me and told me a bit about PFF, said that he was looking for people to help out. So I got involved a little bit then and learned a little bit of the process, did a couple of trial games for Neil, and then had another job that I got some more hours in, so it kind of cut back on my time. So that led to me putting PFF on the back burner for a couple of years until they were actually looking to hire some part-time staff again, and I'd had some time free up at that point. So I was part of your class, but just had a little bit of an introduction to it a few years earlier.
So that's great. I did not know that story, and I think that speaks to all the different people that I've interviewed. We all had our own level of football nerd in us, obviously, to get to this point. I mean, I have notebooks full of jotting down formations and plays and all this silly stuff from like the late 90s and early 2000s. I had no idea that you just went ahead, charted a game, and Neil was scouring for talent on the on the message boards and gave you a call. That's really cool. So then 2011, again, that was my year. That was Brian Hall, our business development guy now, and then you, again, the best class in PFF history. So how did you end up back in 2011? How did you get back involved, or what processes were you a part of, and how has your role really evolved through the years now?
Well, as they were looking for people to help out, and the word was put out that PFF were looking to be able to get in-season work done very quickly. I think the original goal in 2011 was to have everything done by Tuesday, I think, maybe.
Sounds right, yeah.
Yeah, I think that was the goal back then. So they were looking to bring on some people. I'd got in touch with Khaled, did some training there. And I think year one, I was pretty much exclusively player participation, just charting down, looking at players' socks, trying to figure out which individual player was, and going through each game. I mean, I think when I first started doing it, it was probably taking me to do about 12 hours to do a trial game, and then got that down to being able to do it within about 6 hours of the game finishing. So that was pretty much my initial process. And then year two, started to help out a little bit more with some of the content on the website. We had those 3 to Focus on previews that we used to do on a weekly basis. And every week there would always be a call from, I think it was Rick, because Rick was our editor-in-chief back then. And Rick put out a call every week basically saying, okay, there's these 5 articles that still need picked up for previews.
Yeah, you used to crank through 4 or 5 of them on like a Thursday, right? On a Thursday night?
It was my goal was obviously to get a full-time job within PFF, so I just figured, okay, there's a key thing that needs to happen, a key thing that needs done, so I'm just going to make sure I'm available every week. So the interesting thing was, as a funny story from that, technically I had an engagement break off midway through writing a 3 to Focus article because my ex-fiance did not love how much time I spent doing PFF stuff in my spare time. I mean, in truth, it was a relationship that wasn't going anywhere anyway. We'd reached a certain point in life, but the
I'd
PFF
like to think
thing
that PFF did not break up your potential marriage.
No, I mean, it definitely didn't. I was just midway through the article when an argument or heated discussion about it broke out, and then decisions were made after that, and then I calmly got back to finishing my 3 to Focus on article.
That's awesome. I love it. What a great story. Another one, I knew that there was a breakup. I didn't know that it happened in the middle of the 3 to Focus on. I mean, those were, every week we allowed, we had a bunch of part-time guys, guys really wanting to get involved to, they could write some of those articles. And as the year went on, they, sometimes interest waned from some guys that are no longer with the company. So we had to get all of them out every week, and a lot of times there were 3, 4, 5 of them left over, and you were like you were the man taking over and making sure that those got onto the website. And hey, maybe it cost you a marriage, but we moved on. We all moved on for the better.
Exactly. Things happen for a reason, and I think that was part of the way I was able to get myself to full time in PFF, was cranking through those. And even back then at PFF, when we had a smaller group of guys, it's still really competitive trying to make yourself stand out amongst some guys who are really smart when it comes to football, guys who are really hungry. So anything like that could go forward to kind of showcasing myself and showing how determined and committed I was, I was always going to try and do.
So you did. I mean, so that's why I think everybody's loved you around here, Gordon. Not to toot your horn, but you have taken on many different roles, many different hats, and kind of like the heart of early PFF, where we were all part-time analysts, we were player participation guys, we were grading, we were doing content, we were doing podcasts, we were doing editing. We did a little of everything. So we've all worn multiple hats. But when did this all come to a head and you got that full-time position? What year was that again? And what was that first call like when you got at it as a full-timer? Were you number 7, number 8 in the company?
I think so. I think it was around about 7 or 8. It was in that. I think it was the year after you came on board full time. I think it was me. Basically, 2013, I think it would have been. And in the August, we were heading towards preseason. I was down taking a vacation, visiting my parents, and Khaled got in touch. I think I actually reached out to Khaled about an article idea I'd had to dig into some stuff and looking at some big picture things. And Khaled basically called me up and said, I've been really wanting to bring you on board full time for the best part of 6 months because of the extra things you've been taking on. Let me have a conversation with Neil and let's see if we can work out the numbers. And then a couple hours later, got a call back from Neil and Khaled, and it was great. It was just such a nice feeling to know. I mean, I worked 8 years in retail before then, and I didn't hate my job. I liked it fine, but to be able to say that your full-time job is watching football, is writing about football, is grading football, things like that, was just such a really almost an overwhelming feeling of kind of reaching a goal of all the hard work and all the extra effort that had gone into the 3 to Focus on articles and picking up extra processes and things like that here. I think just really felt like it was really worth it at that point.
Yeah, that's definitely one thing that does not go unnoticed is the guys that do go above and beyond and get good quality work done at PFF. Those guys, Khaled, Neil, other people that are in charge always seem to notice and reward that. I do remember talking to you your first week and how excited you were, though there were some ups and downs during the early years. Weren't you almost fired multiple times your first couple weeks on the job? What happened with that?
I think not multiple times. There was one, not even necessarily I was almost fired. There was just...
Don't get in the way of a good story. We were kicking you out the door.
Yeah, I was gone one weekend. It's anyone who knows Neil Hornsby knows that he is a very... he has very high standards, and I was part of his special teams process. This was before I ran special teams. It was Neil's baby originally, and I remember I got to Saturday, my first week as a full-timer at PFF. I think I'd slept for about 35 minutes over the course of the week, and Neil calls me up to say he'd noticed a couple of errors on my special teams player participation form that I'd submitted, and I was like, oh, okay. I went in and looked at them, was like, oh, you're right, I was wrong on those. It's fine, move on, hang up. And he calls me like again 45 minutes later to find that he'd found errors in my second game. I was like, okay, it's, the footage is a little bit difficult to see, but and he was getting really annoyed at the fact that I hadn't, in his opinion, I hadn't checked it. I hadn't looked to kind of compare it. And it was only after like the third or fourth call that it turned out that there was actually a process he'd set up that I had no idea about, to go in and check my data against what was there. But for a good few days, there was this awkward feeling of, yeah, Neil might fire me. So yeah, that was an interesting first week.
Well, no, Neil just likes to put the pressure on, make sure he's getting the best of you.
Exactly.
We established that on the Neil Hornsby podcast a couple weeks ago. If you want to hear from the Godfather, who always has high standards. He compares himself to a similar NFL coach who also has high standards. I do suggest you go back and listen to that. You mentioned special teams. We've talked about it a little bit. How did that come about? Because like I said, you've worn multiple hats. There was the one year that we started special teams. It was a big move for the company because NFL teams, it's kind of like a new frontier for NFL teams because it takes a lot of time and effort to actually not only know who's on the field for special teams, but actually analyze how well guys are playing on special teams. So this was what I understand to be a fascinating process. I wanted zero part of special teams. I stayed as far away from it as possible, but a process of Neil talking to special teams coaches, you getting involved, talking to special teams coaches, and really honing in on how to best capture special teams data, information, grading. So how did that become your responsibility, your baby? And, we joke about it. We joke with you all the time about special teams and how much you love it. But it's certainly something that I don't know that you were necessarily looking for, but you embraced and really made that a huge part of your role here and the company's when we pursue NFL team customers.
Funnily enough, I think it really started, and the path towards it started that day that Neil called me up to complain about my mistakes on player participation, because the one thing that I think, or not the one thing, but one thing about Neil is how high his standards are is something that feeds down throughout the company, and it's hard to not be enthused by that desire to make sure we do everything to the absolute highest standard that it possibly can be done. So from that call, when Neil had gave me the way to check through this stuff, I was very particular about the fact that I didn't want to make many mistakes the rest of the year going forward. And by the end of the year, it turned out he was really impressed by the fact that I'd really taken on board his feedback, really worked hard at it. And there were a bunch of checks he wanted done on the special teams data. So kind of went from there and then got into the point of asking me to take over the process, which great, obviously very exciting because it's your first year being a full-time part of the company. And I was just doing 4 or 5 different things here and there. So it was great to get to a point where I had a chance to kind of put my mark on it. And then so special teams from there just grew. And as you touched on there, we've just tried to hone the process by talking to coaches in the NFL, not just for kind of tips on how to grade certain things or ask for feedback on grades on certain things, but also on the type of data they would like us to collect. We've improved every year the data that we've been collecting for them, different little pieces of information that they can put into action in game plans. But on the grading front, it's always good to get feedback. I had an experience at the NFL Combine recently whereby we were in a meeting with one of our NFL team clients, and they had one of their special teams assistants in there, and we're talking back and forth about stuff, and it gets to the end of the meeting, and he gets quite animated, and he wants to talk about the grading, and he wants to know how we graded a player, because he doesn't think we're going to have graded a player right on this play because they had a certain assignment, etc., etc. Long story short, we graded the player the exact way he would have liked to have graded them. So to go into that and get that feedback from an NFL coach that the way we're grading things is the exact way they would grade it is really great feedback to get. And I think we're still fairly young in the special teams process, and that we've only been doing it for a couple of years, but that continual improvement is something that we're always striving for.
Yeah, those are always fun when you sit down with a coach and they bring up something somewhat nuanced, and it's like, no, we got it. We captured that pretty well. The other part, because just from the pure data collection, that there's always the two sides to PFF. There's the grading and a lot of the stuff that fans see that's forward facing, but it's the data collection that is so valuable to NFL teams. I've been in so many meetings where special teams coaches are almost near tears when they're like, man, you saved me 8 hours a week, 12 hours a week, because we're collecting a lot of the data and player participation and things that they spend most of their week doing, so then they can focus on the actual strategy, the actual game planning of how to prepare for the week rather than collecting the data. So that has certainly been fun to see, and you've spearheaded that entire movement. So along the way, when you're doing the special team stuff, is there a certain position, special teamers, that you love more than others? Is it a gunner? Is it a vice? Give us the in-depth details of the special teams. Who do you like watching? And then we'll get into who your favorite long snappers might be.
I like the guys who play vice. I like to think...
Explain the vice for our listeners real quick.
The vice role can be known as a few things, sometimes known as the anti-gunner. He's the guy the gunners obviously line up on the punt team to try and get downfield, the guys who line up on the edges near the sideline. The vice, they're the guys who line up opposite them, sometimes double teaming, sometimes on their own, and their job is literally to slow that gunner down and stop him getting downfield as fast as they can. And the one thing I love about it is it's very similar to a wide receiver cornerback matchup, only in football there's not a lot of penalties aren't called in the same way for holding that they are on offense and defense. So as a vice, you can get away with a little bit more contact and a little bit more holding in that role. So from there, guys like Justin Bethel in Arizona, who struggled a little bit when he played cornerback on the outside, was so good as a vice just because he could lock on and get a really good grip of the guy and just prevent those guys from getting downfield. And I think, considering when you look at what a gunner is able to do, the way I always look at it, a gunner has the advantage on every battle with him in a vice because he knows where it's going. He knows he's going outside on the play. He knows he's going inside. The vice has all that space he has to try and cover and try and block for. And when you see the guys who can really just lock onto a guy, it always really impresses me.
We've either completely intrigued all of our listeners or we've lost them all forever. So special teams talk.
There's a good chance that you may lose about 10,000 listeners to the PFF podcast, and it might be my fault.
That's okay. We still have millions and millions of listeners, so losing 10,000 would not be a big deal. Give me your favorite long snappers as we wrap things up, Gordon.
I'm going to have to say my favorite is, strangely, one of the most well-known. So John Dorenbos, the Philadelphia Eagles, the guy who everyone knows because I think he was on America's Got Talent. Is that we've got Britain's Got Talent over here. I think you guys have the same thing
right.
There. He was a magician when he was on there. As good a magician as I'm sure he is a phenomenal long snapper, incredibly accurate. I think 2 of the last 3 years he's been up there in either the top or second top in the top 3 most accurate long snappers. Something we obviously track on a game-by-game basis is how accurate a long snapper is, making sure that they're not snapping over the holder's head on field goals, over the punter's head on punts. And he's a guy who's just incredibly consistent.
I know my good friend Zach Diossi is not always our highest graded long snapper, but he's my favorite, my former workout partner, Zach Diossi of the New York Giants. Always texts me at the end of the season, hey, how'd the grades go? And I said, look, let's stay friends. We'll talk about something else. Anyway, give me your final thoughts. Wrap it up. Anything that you want the fans to know and the listeners to know as far as your progression to PFF, how you've seen everything grow, and where we're going for the future?
I mean, I think if anyone can learn anything from me, is that if you really want to have a job in football, if you want to have a full-time job at PFF, if some random Scottish guy who happened to stumble upon a fans forum with Neil Hornsby about 10 years ago can find a career in football, anyone has the ability to do so. Just if you love writing about football, if you love digging into analysis, things like that, just be passionate about it and keep working, and there's always roles for people.
I have to say, you do have the best accent at PFF. It has, I want to say, cleaned up a little bit over the years, become a little bit more Americanized. Is that fair, Gordon?
It definitely has a little bit. I mean, I've had now 4 or 5 trips over, especially since we've now got the offices in Cincinnati, and also doing podcasts with you, with Jack, people over the years. You understand that people are not going to understand me if I use the voice and accent that I use when I go to a soccer game here in Scotland. People are not going to understand a word I say. So I have to clean it up, and I like to think what I use on podcasts and talking to you guys is probably more my sober accent. When I get a little bit drunk, the accent definitely flips back into impossible for everyone else to understand. So you guys get the sober accent, and that's easier to understand.
Well, it's good to know that you don't work drunk, but we will have to get you back on after a few beers and just see how it plays out. I do enjoy when you do you are our lead SEC analyst the last year or so, and when you do have to do some SEC radio and podcast and things, it is always interesting when you're talking to the Deep South with the Scottish accent. But I love it. You did a fantastic job as lead SEC analyst. So there you have it. Gordon McGinnis, wearer of many hats, our lead special teams analyst, SEC expert, and all-around good guy, and describing his role and his progression here at PFF. And now we're here with Director of Football Operations at PFF, a new shiny title for Mr. Rick Drummond. Rick is another Cincinnatian now. Cincinnatian? I think that's what we've established we are. Moved in from the Bay Area just last year, so another guy that relocated, and Rick was another one of the very, very early adopters here at PFF. Rick, how's it going?
Good, Steve. How are you?
Doing great. Thanks for being on, and just like some of the other guys, just trying to get a feel for the early days, the early stories. So tell everyone about your background, the various hats you've worn, not only at PFF but outside of PFF, and kind of what led you to the company originally.
Okay. So before PFF, I did a whole bunch of different stuff that is probably more than we can talk about right now, and it's probably too boring to talk about right now, but I was a chiropractor at one point. I made wine at one point. I was a high school hockey coach at one point. A varied path to get to PFF. And I found PFF in 2008 when stuff went up on the website, and I stumbled onto it, thought it was something I'd never seen before. It was pretty cool. I kind of kept track of it over the course of the next year, and they started, as you talked about the guys in the other show, they started keeping up more in 2009. I watched them through that season and then reached out to them after 2009, just saying I wanted to get involved if I could, and got an email back from Neil with like a sample player participation sheet attached to it and said, do this, and that was it. So I got started doing that while I was still in the wine industry, and was doing this at nighttime around the day job like everyone else was doing for a few years. And then since then I've done a bunch of different things with PFF. So it's been a really kind of weird ride, but it's been awesome.
How you don't really have the most pristine reputation when it comes to PP as far as your accuracy goes. How did you get a job with Neil after, just by filling out a player participation sheet? I thought you weren't that good at it.
So the whole Rick being bad at PP thing has turned into this big fishing story.
Really?
I was never, the superstar at it. I'll admit that, but I wasn't bad. I wasn't terrible. And it's just become a story to tell. So it's kind of a fun thing around the halls of PFF Towers, but it's not based on reality.
Yeah, I think we've learned that mediocrity moves you forward in this company. So, congrats on that. Yeah. No, really, you did so many things. When I first got here in 2011, you'd already been here for at least a year or so. You were, to me, more editor-in-chief or whatever you want to call it. You were just the editor, but that was like your side job. And you were on the West Coast, so your hours were different. Throw on top of that the fact that I don't think you sleep, right? Is that correct? There's also a rumor going around that you just don't sleep at all?
I sleep. I don't sleep a whole lot. Just, people need to sleep different number of hours each night. And I've always got by like on 3 or 4 hours of sleep. And I sleep probably 4, 5, 6 now that I'm a little older and I don't know, but I can, I guess. So, and it feels fine. But yeah, I didn't sleep a whole lot back then. But that was mostly because you like I said, we had day jobs and we were doing this work at night and the edit stuff and everything else that was going on was the stuff you really wanted to do. So like you would rather be doing that than sleeping and just get enough sleep so you can get through the next day. So it wasn't painful at all. It was just something that was just what we did.
I love that you have the cush job now that allows you 4 to 5 hours of sleep a night now.
Totally.
That's great.
It's a whole new life. Yeah.
I loved when we used to have, I think it was like 9 a.m. Eastern meetings. So that's about 2 p.m. UK time. That's 6 a.m. your time.
Yeah.
But the way the way people were broken down, if I woke up really early, the UK guys were on Skype. If I was up really late, and at that time, 2010 or 2011, 12, 13, I was up pretty late, and you were always on. So it was always nice because there was always somebody at PFF on Skype or around to talk to, and you kind of held it down on the West Coast. So that was great.
It was good. We had a lot of, and we still do have like that time zone coverage that's pretty important to us. But back in the time when it was a small gang of guys, it was really useful to be able to. I mean, we had someone on communicating 24 hours a day, literally, and we could hand stuff off to the next guy that was coming on, and it wasn't like shift work, but there was always someone who was waking up in some time zone somewhere, so it was easy to get stuff going and keep it going all the way around the clock.
So as I said earlier, you've worn multiple hats. Again, you were the editor back in the day. You've done analysis. You've done the player participation stuff. But then you certainly evolved. You did a lot of work directly with NFL teams, a big part of our sales process. Worked with some of our network partners to get some of the unbelievable graphics and the data that goes on to the networks that all the fans see. So I guess broadly, how have you seen your role evolve? And is there a part of everything that you've done, or is there one thing that you've enjoyed more than others? How has that whole process been for you? Because it's like every time there's some big project that we're getting into, you seem to be in the middle of it and jumping in and kind of making it work.
It's been going from one thing to the next, and each opportunity comes along. We haven't seen a lot of them, coming from a long distance. So a lot of it's been, hey, this is coming up now. We need someone to do this, and it's just been like you happen to be standing in the right place. But I think some of it is just, like a lot of us, we try to do as many things as we can. It's one of the things that I tell a lot of our younger guys who are coming up in the company now is just, get involved in as many processes as you can, get involved in as many different deliveries as you can, get to know as many of the, hundreds of guys that we have in the building now as you can, because all that stuff adds up to making you more valuable at the end of the day, right? You end up having a much broader skill set and be able to contribute in a lot more different ways. And I've appreciated that about it. But I think if you asked for the one favorite thing that I've done about this, it has to be like probably some of the direct contact with teams, which I haven't had, a ton of. It's been really nice when I have. It's been enjoyable. But I think overall the biggest thing is just being able to be involved in so many things, and you get to kind of craft your spot once you come up through and you get enough stuff in your pocket that you've done. You get to kind of dictate a little bit to what you want to be involved in. And I think as we've grown up as a company and that ladder has grown wider, and we have more opportunities for guys in these varied departments of work that are being done, that's pretty exciting. There's a lot of stuff that you can just get your hands in. You do the same thing. You're involved in every corner of the business in some manner or another, and I think you feed off some of the same stuff. And I know the talks that you and I have had over the years, it's been a lot about ideas and stuff that's coming next and wanting to be involved with this thing and what you're currently doing and all of that. So it's I think it's kind of a shared approach for a lot of our guys.
Yeah, man, it's been an interesting process for me because we've had to exhibit patience at some times. At other times, it's been all right. It's all gung ho. Let's get something done. And there was definitely a time in the company where, like you said, we'd have conversations. Man, we should be doing this or we should be doing that, and we have so much information. We could really be shaping the outlook of football, of the NFL and college. And we just needed a little bit of patience as we were a young company. But as Chris got involved and we advanced the staff a little bit, we've been able to see a lot of those things come to fruition. I still think that there's still a lot more to come. So that's kind of my last thing to wrap it up. Any last general thoughts as far as PFF as a whole, how you've seen it evolve? I've asked everybody from your early days to now, how have you seen just the tone toward PFF, respect or disrespect? How have you seen that evolve? And then, down the road, where do you see us going? What's kind of like the next steps for PFF without necessarily giving away a 10-point business plan or anything like that?
Yeah, I think over the years, the big thing that we've all seen is just as the familiarity with what we do and the company's name, and as that stuff has become ubiquitous, that people just kind of, the conversation changes, right? So you end up not having so much of a combative kind of who the hell are you guys kind of thing. It's more of a like, what do you guys have to say about this? And then we get in the conversations, and even when those other kinds of conversations come up where it is more challenging, our guys are so well equipped now, and our guys have been through so much of the grind over the years that yourself and Sam and Kay and Ben and everybody can just answer questions, and it's a freer conversation because you don't feel like you're trying to defend yourself all the time, right? So you're a lot more open to explaining what we do and what we're trying to do and how we're doing it, and it's I think that freedom that has come with the evolution of those conversations over the years has really been pretty important, because it kind of bleeds across everything that we do, and that's even directly with the teams, and we see, working with all of our team clients, those conversations have changed, and that's been pretty meaningful because we had to climb a big wall to even just break into that neighborhood, right? And once we got in with them, it was still a struggle, and it was from team to team to team as they added up, and we're pushing 50 teams now with college and NFL, and it's a lot of programs to work with, and a lot of staffs, and a lot of different thoughts that are coming at you all the time, but a lot of it ends up being the same kinds of conversations, and we just handle them really well now, and it's I'm very proud of that. I'm proud of all of our guys that have kind of grown up and with that. I mean, I hesitate to call it a battle, but there was something of a battle element to it, right? And it's
for sure.
It's something that's been overcome to a great extent, and it's kind of a cool moment when you get in those conversations, and the light bulb kind of goes on for the person that's sitting across from you that this is what you guys are doing. This is what the information means. This is how I can use it. And it's really fulfilling. I mean, to know that we are having a legit impact on guys who are, making decisions in the league and around college football, and all the way from personnel decisions down to game day decisions. And it's really cool, and it's really something I think that we all wanted to happen along the way. And this isn't even getting into the conversation about what we're doing on the consumer side of stuff and all that. So there's so many things that have come out of where this started that I think the growth is the thing that, if you had to point to one thing, that evolution from where it started to where it is now is amazing. And it's down to, we had to start with a great idea, and we had a bunch of great people added to it, and put in good processes, and it's worked out, and it's pretty much the formula for it, right? I mean, there isn't a whole lot more to it.
Yeah, I mean, that's the formula we try to keep and try to stay consistent with. In that continued growth, I've told people, I feel like this podcast is as much about the history of PFF and football as it is just business, and hearing people like yourself and Neil and Khaled and people with different angles and saying things, maybe similar things, but saying them with a slightly different slant, and kind of how we've all kind of meshed together to make this happen. My one last question, what I find most interesting during conversations with NFL teams is how different, not so much they look at us or look at our data, but how they use it. When they listen to a conversation or listen to a presentation from us, and the light bulb goes on differently in all 32 teams' heads or 20 plus college teams. I mean, there's just different angles that they see. Have you seen that difference? Are there certain teams that just do some things that you say, man, that's something we didn't even think of, or other teams that you just feel like, man, they are doing it the right way? Other teams where you're like, hey, they're doing this a different way, but it's valuable. How have you seen just differences? Because I think fans are really intrigued when their favorite team supposedly is using analytics or using this or using that. But to me, that's not like a blanket thing. It's just it's really unique with each of those front offices and coaching staffs.
Yeah, it's a huge takeaway from the experience of like seeing the teams use our stuff and just getting a feel for where they're getting value. The one thing across the board for all of them is that we're offering a lot of efficiencies, a lot of opportunities for them to create hours in their week, which is hugely important for every one of them. But the big difference between them all, and you could probably like guess this going in, but I think I had trouble. I wouldn't have expected the span of like the teams that are doing the most crazy analytic stuff, that they're building stuff in every system in their building and using every piece of every data point that they can get, to the teams who are really still scratching the surface. And you start to realize that these are 32 or 50 or 100 and however many different companies basically, and they're all run differently, and they all believe in different things, and they're all trying to get some edge somewhere and going about it in different ways. And we're plugging into all of them, and we have something to offer all of them. But it is really interesting to see like where they spend their resources and the stuff that they choose to dive into, the different pieces of it that they latch onto more than others. I think that's the interesting part. It is probably a separator between a lot of them. There's a lot of those separators from just skills and their staffs in general. But this is another one of those things that I think if we had some picture of them across the board, which we probably do in house now, that's you can look at it and just see where results are coming from, what they're pouring in. And I found that really interesting. I just think that there's a couple of standout teams that. It's amazing just to hear the stuff that they're working on. They're light years ahead of others, and the others are surviving somehow. And they're a little more old school, and they're coming along slowly. But every one of them is going that direction. So
that's definitely one of my biggest takeaways from all of those different meetings. Is each team's at a different level. Doesn't mean that some are great and some are. Doesn't mean that the people that aren't at the top level are bad necessarily. But like you said, scratching the surface, finding their way. Using stuff, but maybe not enough just yet. So, part of our process is educating them and helping them maximize all of the mounds of data that we give them. And it's the same approach that we've taken with our customers as well, our fans and the consumer side of the business. And that's why we've got 2 new products out there that we feel like we're helping to kind of give back, because we did have a couple of years of taking the data back from our hardcore PFF fans. So we do hope everybody's going to enjoy PFF Edge, PFF Elite, 2 top products that we put back out on the market that will help you if you love football, love fantasy, whatever it is, there'll be something for everybody. NFL Draft, my baby. So there's plenty for everyone there. The same way we provide different avenues for teams to use our information to help them win games. So Rick, appreciate having you on. That is Rick Drummond, our Director of Football Operations. So there you have it. The class of 2010, 2011 still going strong. Man, we had a lot of fun talking about Nate lying, and I still don't know if I can trust Nate and his weight estimates. And some of the stories that Gordon and Rick told, I hadn't even heard yet either. And that's been my favorite part about this whole thing, is kind of digging with some of these guys who are my friends, and I still don't even know some of the stories that kind of shaped their, not only getting to PFF, but some of the other things that have happened along the way.
If the great Marcel Reese argument, 101 argument of when 2012 was, maybe my favorite PFF story, the Nathen Yankee weight gate, the scales incident of whenever that was, is right up there with one of my favorite ever PFF moments. That was one of the funniest things I have ever witnessed. It was also a personal highlight for hitting it 168 pounds on the nose. But there's
won
a
money
video
in that. It was great.
I did. I won like $8 or something out of that.
Yeah, it was
largely because I paid for your dollar as well, which actually was winning my own money back. In fact, I had like a quarter of that was my own input to it. But anyway, I won money out of that by guessing Nate's weight, having professed 140 pounds. But that was possibly my favorite part of that, is that while everyone else was guessing, estimating Nate's weight, more or less in the same kind of ballpark, when it came round for Nate, even when money was still on the line, he stuck to his guns, doubled down, and went with 140.
He really stuck with 140 and was off by 28 pounds. It was alarming. It was just alarming for a guy who controls so many of the numbers at PFF. That's all. That was, I think, the biggest issue with Nate Gate. So we had a lot of fun with those three guys. 2010, 2011, those guys are still going strong in their own way. As we mentioned at the beginning of the show, we've got the 2 new products. Be sure to get to iTunes, give us a 5-star review. You will be in the running to win PFF Edge $200 value. And Sam, give them the website one more time for the survey, because this is really important. We're trying to collect a little bit of information on everybody. Take about 15-20 seconds.
Yeah, into your web browser, survey.libsyn.com/PFF podcast, and take our little survey. Just a few seconds of your life gone will help us out greatly.
Yeah, we will really appreciate it. So again, thanks to everybody for listening and supporting the podcast. Be sure to check out Sam at PFF_Sam on Twitter. I am at PFF_Steve, and we'll be back next week with even more of the history of PFF.